When I first began buying Cardano 4 years ago, it was a speculative bet on the Gen 3 blockchain race. Since then, it's become pretty clear what criteria will be used to judge that race. It turns out it's not mission impossible to use VC money to build a centralized network that scales well. There's also no mystery at this point around what a network looks like when it's broken by gas fees. The real triple crown is building a network that people actually want to use, that's decentralized in validation and ownership, actually scales, and isn't broken by fees. Right now, only Cardano seems to be on that road. Ready? Let's go. Today, we are going to discuss the gigantic Vayner Sports fiasco and what it says about the role of fees in this whole Gen 3 blockchain race. The new Africa Incubator in Cardano, another step toward a future that is not 2D. I really think the future is going to be 3D, guys. And a new start for one of Cardano's Metaverse projects. If you're against exorbitant gas fees, and if you prefer oceans over ponds, or if you just appreciate these Cardano videos, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. This is so unbelievably broken. Even the pond dwellers can tell that this is a complete train wreck. Look at this. This is a .eth person. Even they know, even the pond dwellers know, this is stuff that will only work in the pond. This won't work for the ocean. This is some pond stuff. The pond dwellers should be outraged by this. Here we have a .eth person pointing out a total of $26 million in change was spent just on gas for failed and successful transactions on the Vayner Sports Mint. A total of $8 million in change was made from the sale. Think about that. And then he posts what is maybe the most important thing here. He says, miners right now, they've got so much cash, so many stacks of cash. It's ridiculous. Obviously, somebody loves this situation. It's not the creators. It's not the artists. It's not the people actually creating this intellectual property. And it's not the end users. It's the miners and the block validators. They're the ones who love this situation. It's nobody else. It's just them. They're the ones dancing around like this. Even AJ Vaynerchuk, Gary V's brother, says, not ideal. Do you think that's not ideal? Because I would say that's definitely not ideal. Gary Vaynerchuk's brother, AJ Vaynerchuk, who is what is his title? VSP and co-founder of Vayner Sports. Is that right? He says, not ideal. If I could do it over again, we would have gone. I think he means gone. We would have gone with an allow list leading up over a period of time. So he's saying we should have whitelisted people and let this mint happen over time. A failure on my part. The group cohesion and cognitive dissonance is so strong, even though all the pond dwellers know this is some pond stuff, not some ocean stuff. He still has to say, obviously, we can't fault the network. This is obviously my fault. I'm saying it's a flaw of the network if this is even possible. If this is possible, there's a problem with the network. And other people not letting them off so lightly. In fact, this was the original .eth person saying, society, if gas prices weren't so high, if you're just listening and not watching right now, it's going to be a picture of a super futuristic city. Cardano is not the only blockchain that has solved this. Some of our other competitors are also not broken by fees. But the way our competitors, aside from this blockchain, have done it is by being centralized, both in terms of ownership, a lot of times in certain VCs, and in block validation. They have highly centralized ownership of their coins or tokens, and they have highly centralized block validation. That's also some pawn stuff. If you built a blockchain with VC money and those VCs control a large amount of the coins in your ecosystem, and a large amount of the value of the coins in your ecosystem, which is largely going to be the base layer with a lot of these ecosystems. And your block validation is also highly centralized. We know that that's something that's possible. That's not miraculous. If you are able to solve the fee problem by having an extremely centralized network, we know that's something that can be done. Many different projects have done that. The problem is you could also do that with a server. You could also run a ledger on a server in your basement. Some dude, a single dude with a server in his basement, can replicate the same thing you're doing. Sure, instead of it being one dude with a server in his basement, it might be a handful or maybe even, 50, 20, 100, whatever, some small number of people running usually pretty expensive hardware, but a small number of people running the blockchain. This is something that can be duplicated by one dude. Do people really find any significant margin of added utility when it's 20 people, 30 people instead of one guy? Sure, it's probably better if it's 20 or 30 people, but it's not the same as 3,000 independent parties validating the blockchain. It's a completely thing when it's truly decentralized. Sure, it's easy to beat this fee problem with centralized block validation and usually also centralized ownership of the value in your ecosystem. It's really hard to do it and still be decentralized. If you can be as or more, in the case of Cardano, decentralized than Ethereum, and you solve the fee problem, then you're really doing something. If you're doing this by being centralized, more centralized than Ethereum, you're still living in the pond. You're also a pond dweller. This episode really could have been called Cardano versus the pond dwellers, but I thought that'd be too pejorative. While Ethereum is trying really hard not to have single event gas fees that could completely fund small nations, Cardano is doing this. This article says Project Catalyst launches Incubator for Africa. So this goes back to what seems like it's been a kind of a long collaboration. I think we've been hearing about IOG working with Ice Addis for a long time. And now we see Input Output Global's Project Catalyst has launched Ariob, an incubator scheme in collaboration with Ice Addis, a pan-African business incubator and accelerator. Ariob means a collection of starts in an ancient Semitic language of Ethiopia. I feel like IOG has some very nuanced labeling of projects. There's always multiple layers to the names of the projects. It's very nuanced. I like it. They say this strategic partnership is designed to enhance the growth of projects funded by Project Catalyst, Cardano's innovation engine, and offers high potential Catalyst startups access to venture building expertise and resources to help develop products that solve real life challenges in Africa. This answers one of the smaller questions that's always been asked about Cardano's involvement in Africa. And that's, can you just throw money at a problem? Whenever the topic of catalyst funding of Africa projects has come along, one question has always been, can you really solve problems and make any progress if you just throw money at something? This answers that question. We're not just going to throw money at African projects. There's also going to be incubation. I think this is a pretty important step. If we really want to grow African projects that might be involved with Cardano, money alone won't do the trick, but money plus this kind of incubation just might do it. I really don't think the future of our web activities is two-dimensional. Right now, we do a lot of things on the web that involve either words on the screen or flat two-dimensional images on the screen. I think a lot more of even our mundane web activities in the future are going to be this much more immersive 3D type experience. Here we see an early nascent step in that direction. Blockchainparty.games says first multiplayer Metaverse NFT marketplace going live soon. If you look at this video, you can see that there are multiple players. Let's call them players, but I would just say people people having an immersive 3D experience. There are people there and they're looking at NFTs with prices above them, including multiple space buds. Pretty soon we saw this first space bud bought in Metaverse. I hope that 5.88K is a good investment to prove that my stuff works. Number 8201 going in the history books. And the quoted tweet down here was, I just witnessed the first purchase of a Space Buds NFT in the metaverse. I think a lot of different mundane activities are going to be happening in 3D like this. And I think that's really a big part of what the metaverse is going to bring to the table as far as people enjoying all the things they can do in the on the internet. People kind of laughed earlier this year or last year. I think it was actually last year when I said that I wouldn't be surprised at all if even things like DEXs happen predominantly in an immersive type 3D environment in the metaverse. If even DEXs are things that people experience predominantly in something that looks like what today we call the metaverse, that wouldn't surprise me at all because it's a more fulfilling experience when on the screen your avatar is experiencing things in 3D just like you do in real life. It's a little tiny bit more like real life. And I know people are saying, no, 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 I just want to have numbers and words on the screen. I don't need all this metaverse stuff. We also didn't think we would need email at one point either. Nobody ever thought that email would replace people sending letters back and forth. There was a time when nobody ever thought there would be utility in providing people the ability to watch movies on their phone. We'll see what the future brings, but I think everything is going to be a whole lot more three-dimensional than it is today. Speaking of metaverse projects, Ada Realm has teamed up with Actum Games. We've covered this previously. Ada Realm is doing something that I think probably makes sense for a lot of metaverse projects. There are some metaverse projects where the development team are already game developers. They're already oriented towards game development. And there are other metaverse projects where the team are maybe crypto people who aren't game developers. In that case, I think it makes a lot of sense to team up with a legit game development shop. In the case of Ada Realm, they've sort of chosen to develop in Unity, and Actum Games is a Unity shop. This seems to be the perfect way to go because really, when we think about metaverse projects, what do we actually want? What do we actually want from a metaverse project? We want it to look like our favorite video game. You kind of want it to look like Assassin's Creed. You want it to look at least as good as the latest Assassin's Creed game, with one exception. We want to own everything. We don't want the game development shop to own all of the digital assets inside the metaverse. We want the community to own all those assets. We want it to be Assassin's Creed, only somebody in our community owns each of those buildings. The blacksmith is an actual person in our community. All of the clothes, all of the mounts, all of the different assets inside the metaverse, inside this metaverse project, are actually owned by the community. But we still want it to look at least as good as our favorite video game. I think teaming up with a game development shop like this is probably the right way to achieve that if the team's not already oriented towards game development. If you want to hear about this new era in the Ada Realm story, this new direction for Ada Realm, there will be an AMA on April 7th, which will be today for most of you if you're listening to this video on the day it comes out. And there will be members from, it sounds like there will be members from both the Actum Games team and the Ada Realm team. Finally, I think Maladex made a great observation today. They said, when it comes to liquidity, DeFi doesn't have a volume problem, it has a utility problem. I tend to agree with this. I've previously proposed that total value locked is the wrong metric. We should really be interested in something that's more like total value decentralized, because that's what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to decentralize everything. Total value locked is like, hey, congratulations, your money was liberated by this crypto ethos, but now it's been locked, relocked in a new prison, in the dungeon of a new master. It's locked. That's great, right? It should be total value liberated. TVL should be total value liberated as opposed to total value locked. I don't want my money locked. I want my money liberated, free. I want freedom for my ducats. I think Maladex is onto a big part of the problem here. The crypto space has become obsessed with the volume of money locked in a platform, but really it should be about the utility that locking that money in a platform provides to the end users. I think this is a much better way to look at DeFi, and we're probably measuring DeFi in the wrong ways right now. I hope you're having a great week, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.